Hello everyone, welcome to the online lecture series on Verilog HDL. So in the previous sessions we had discussed on evolution of CAD and then we looked into a typical design flow of HDLs. So in today's session we shall look into the importance and what are its current trends which are going on in HDLs. So coming why actually the HDLs are very much important. See, as once a physical layout is ready and they have come up with the GTS2 file, so at that time there is no need to specify. As a designer, what they have to do is that whether once your design is going for fabrication, at that time what happens is that we need to specify what type of technology we are using for that particular layout. So as of now you can use 180 nanometer technology and then you can go for 90 nanometer, and the current trends which are going on, as you might come across these mobile chips which are running at the latest mobiles. Okay, so there you will be seeing that in this particular mobile we have used the Snapdragon 865, 855 with 7 nanometer technology and then 10 nanometer technology and all those things. See why they are specifying that nanometer. See, that is the technology which they have used in order to come up that particular processor. So in that particular processor, each transistor will be of what? It will be of 10 nanometer. The channel length of the transistor will be what? It is going to be 10 nanometer, or it might be 7 nanometer if they have used 7 nanometer technology. See, if we are going to decide, see, based on the technology file what we are using, there are certain things where we need to take care of, like current leakages and all those things. Okay, so when it comes to HDL, if we are going for in terms of back end design, we need to take care of all those things so that our design meets the technology parameters. Okay, now if you are in terms of front end design and you are designing in terms of HDLs are not at all dependent on the technology file. Okay, they are independent, and if you want to convert like HDL into any type of technology, if you might have designed a thing and then you have synthesized it, the same synthesized gate level netlist can be done in terms of 180 nanometer, and it can be done in terms of 90 nanometer, and it can be done in terms of 45 nanometer, and it can be done in terms of 22 nanometer. So it depends, whichever the technology file you want to use, you can retrace back the HDL gate level netlist to any of the technology files. So that is why there is no need of choosing whichever the technology file you want to use. It is all dependent on the designer who is going to be doing in terms of back end, whether he wants to go with the 22 nanometer or whether he wants to go with the 14 nanometer technology. Okay, so here what the HDLs will come very much handy or very much useful. Okay, and there is no only what we are doing in terms of HDL, we are writing the codes in terms of Verilog, or whether we can go for VHDL, and there is no need for a designer to convert that to what? Gate level netlist. Everything will be taken care by EDA tools. For that reason we are having this logic synthesizer. What does this logic synthesizer will do? It is going to convert the actual the HDL into gate levels, right? So whatever the program you have written, the whole program will be converted into what? It is going to be converted into actual gate level. Okay, so most of the part is taken care over in the logical synthesizer itself, and most of the tools, EDA tools, are having the logical synthesizer in their softwares. So as a HDL designer, we need not to worry about the gate level netlist formation. Okay, so here also this is also one of the important point where the HDLs will come very much useful or handy. So one more what we can do is, once we have written the code, and then we need to test the functionality of the design, whether it is going to be working properly or not. So this design functional verification is being done at the HDL level itself. So the bugs which might come after the fabrication, okay, once your chip is ready or your design is ready, the bugs which might come at that particular level, that is going to be very much less, because most of the verification is being done at the front end level itself, and we will be driving almost all the test cases, right? So all these test cases will be driven at this level, and we might be very much sure that there will be bugs might be there. Okay, I'm not telling that bugs won't be there at all. Bugs might be there, but the number of bugs which might come after the fabrication, that will be very much less. So this is also one of the important point why we are going for HDLs. So and most of the designs are bugs are eliminated at this end itself, as explained previously, and it cuts down the design cycle time. See, this part what we are having, design cycle time, what you can observe over here, this is very much important in terms of industries, because as you might be seeing in the market, you will be seeing Snapdragon 855, and then Snapdragon 855 plus, Snapdragon 865, and you are seeing somewhere around these MediaTek Helio P70, G40 and all these things, right? So these in market, there are so many competitors that they want to leave their particular product to the market first, and as a customer like us, what we will be doing, we will be looking into, okay, this is very much advanced compared to this particular thing, so I'll be going for that particular processor, right? So this is normal human tendency to go into the products which are advanced, or which are advanced compared to the previous version or the other products which are available in the market, right? So that is the reason the design cycle time is very much important. We need to deploy our product to the market as soon as possible, so that we are the market leaders. Okay, we are the trend makers in the particular market. So this is what every industry is looking into. That is why this design cycle time should be as less as possible. When you want your design cycle to be very much less, then HDLs are very much important, because based on the programs what you are writing, even you are testing the functionality whether it is going to work properly or not, right? So that is the reason HDLs are very much important. Okay, so these are some of the points why actually the HDLs are very much important. Let us look into the trends which are currently going on in the market. Our HDLs are not only stick to VHDL and then Verilog. As we saw in the previous cycle or previous slide, we saw that the design time cycle, right? So that design time cycle is very much important, and that design time cycle should be as less as possible, so that we can bring our product to the market very much early. So out of this, what people started thinking, they started implementing, or they started merging the things or the concepts from different languages, so that in order to test the functionality becomes very much easier. As we saw, our Verilog and VHDL, they came way back in 1980s and then 1990s. Okay, and they have become standard for hardware description language. But when it comes to the functionality or the verification part, because most of the front end part what we are having, verification is very much important, right? So what they did was, as our Verilog is somewhat similar to C, the constructs, the Verilog constructs what we are having, it is most of the thing is similar to C. So what they did is they took the OOPS concept, okay, object oriented programming concept, and they merged that object oriented programming concept with Verilog. So when they combined this OOPS concept and the Verilog, what they said that it is system Verilog. System Verilog is we can use this system Verilog in terms of designing a part as well, okay, and most of the time this is going to be used in terms of what? It is going to be used in terms of verification, because the test benches what we are going to write, okay, in the system Verilog, where they are far more advanced test benches what we are going to write in terms of Verilog test benches, okay. So here when we write in terms of system Verilog, we are having so many concepts where we can achieve the verification or the testing part as soon as possible, okay. Other than system Verilog, we are having different types of verification methodologies, okay. Out of that we are having OVM and VVM and all those things, but worldwide famous methodology is the universal verification methodology, or you can call it as UVM. U stands for universal, V stands for verification, and M stands for methodology. So UVM is the current trend. If you go to any semiconductor industries, and if you are going to be in terms of a verification engineer in terms of front end design, you will be working on UVM. This UVM concept is very much important if you want to land, if you want to grab a job in semiconductor domain, that too in terms of front end, okay. So system Verilog and UVM are similar, but the way you are writing the test benches are somewhat differs, okay. But the test bench environment what you are going to do, that is almost similar in terms of system Verilog, and the base language what you are going to, this is as you can see here we have written it as a methodology, right. So methodology is nothing but we will be taking the concepts, or we will be taking we will be writing the programs in terms of system Verilog itself, but the method to the environment, the test bench environment what we are having, the method for in order to establish that environment is somewhat different when it is compared with system Verilog. So that is why this is a standard methodology, okay. So from this methodology we are going to achieve the verification part very much easily and then very much earlier. So that is why this universal verification methodology is very much important. And why actually this is important? What are the things what we can have from this universal verification methodology? See, here comes something called code coverage, okay. As the name suggests, code and then coverage. See, code in the sense this is the program what you have written, okay, and the coverage in the sense how much part of your code has been covered, okay. Now let us take an example. Suppose if I have written somewhere around 100 number of lines of code, okay, in terms of my design file I have written somewhere around 100 lines. The code consists of 100 lines, and the code coverage what it is going to give me, whether the test bench environment from this particular UVM, whether that test bench environment, whether it has hit all the codes which are present in the design file or not. See, suppose if I have written somewhere around as we said 100 number of lines of code, in that let me take I have written somewhere one block which is of if else statement, okay. Now if else statement, how does your if else statement work? If some condition we are going to give. So if that condition is true, then whatever the code or whatever the code which is present inside that if block, that is going to be executed. If that condition is false, then whatever the code which is present at the else part, that is going to be executed. Now if I have driven my inputs in such a way that only that if condition, all the time condition is being what it is going to be being correct, so only that if condition part is going to be executed, whereas the else part is not going to be executed, right. So here if you look at that particular code, all the time your if statements are getting executed, whereas else statements are not at all getting executed. So the coverage what we can have in that particular code is that the coverage is what, only 50%, whereas it has not, because else part is not at all true all the times, because the way we have driven the inputs are not suitable for else part, right. So code coverage what it is going to give, whether all, see here what we can observe is that this else part itself is not at all getting covered. That means my verification is not 100% perfect, right. There are possible way of inputs where even this else part can be tested also. So I have not driven such a type of inputs. So this code coverage what it is going to give me, whether all the possible, all the lines of the code what we have written in the design file, whether they have hit or not. So as a good verification engineer, the code coverage should be 100% or it should be more than 90%. Then what we can call it as the design is almost stable, and then it can go for what, it can go for fabrication. So one more type of coverage what we can observe is that this is going to be functional coverage. Actually here there is a spelling mistake, so it has to be functional. Okay. So functional coverage. So in functional coverage what happens is that it is going to verify the logical part, as here code coverage whether it is going to check whether that particular line has been hit or not, but whereas in functional coverage it is going to test the functionality, so whether that functionality is going to work properly or not. Okay. So even we need to have more than 80% code coverage we can easily obtain, because we will be getting to know that okay, this has not been hit, then I should drive this particular input. So this is somewhat easier to obtain more than 90%, whereas the functional coverage it is somewhat lengthy in order to have, because when the number of inputs are getting increased, the number of inputs driven to test the functionality, that also increases, because as our HDLs are in terms of digital design and will be thinking in terms of binary numbers, and as the number of inputs increase, then the number of inputs to be driven for that particular design will be in terms of what, if I have n number of inputs, then the number of input combinations what I can have is 2 raised to n number of times, right. So that is why functional coverage is also very much important. These two what we are having, these two are very much important. Code coverage should be, as a good verification engineer, code coverage should be more than 90 or 95%, whereas functional coverage what we can have is that it can be 80%, minimum 80% we need to achieve. It is somewhat lengthier, because we need to have all the inputs to be driven. So all the test cases or all the test patterns what we need to have, that to be given as an input to our code, then only we can achieve 80% of functional coverage. Okay. So these are the current trends which are going in terms of HDLs in the market as of now, and if you want to grab or if you want to land a job in semiconductor domain, so these particular things are very much important, and you should have a sound knowledge on these particular concepts. So this is all regarding the HDLs. or the importance and which are the trends which are going on in terms of HDLs. So, in the next class we shall look into different types of methodologies, or not in terms of UVM. We are having different types of concepts, something called as top down approach and then bottom up approach. So, we shall let us take an example of a 4-bit triple carry adder. Based on that particular example, let us look into what are these top down approach and what are these bottom up approach in the next class. Thank you.